Hey guys, we've got another tier list ranking video tonight. This time we've got a bit of an exciting one. We're going to be ranking the biggest anime villain flops of all time. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean any villain that had a lot of promise that wasn't utilized, that wasn't even touched on, or potential that was fumbled, I guess you could say. Another example are the tippity top villains that had so much going from them that really could not stick the landing and went completely downhill, caused plot holes, went against the character development that we had had up until that point, essentially shut the bed. They dropped the ball. Now, this video, we're going to have about 25 different characters to rank, so it might be a little bit of a long one. We'll try to get through them as quickly as we can. We've got a few different anime here, but other than that, a lot of it is centered to the big three. When it came to big anime flops that were noteworthy, the smaller series tended to land their villains a little bit better. And if the villains didn't reach the highs that the big three do, the mainstream type of anime do, they weren't having the faults that came with it, even if they didn't reach the excitement of a Madara Uchiha. Spoiler alert, if you haven't already seen, he is in this list. So if that's enough of a pull to keep you guys watching to see where I might place someone like Madara, then please stick around. Let's get to this video. First up on this list, we have maybe an unusual one. There weren't too many huge flops in anime. So I wanted to get a kind of quite a wide range of characters. So some of them are much bigger flops than others. But to begin with, we have T. Haribal, Espada number 3 from Bleach. Now, in the categories we have S ranked in completely ruined, A, almost unsalvageable, B, a bad villain, C, a compromised villain, and D, you just drop the ball on them. Now, D is kind of like our ambiguous category that we had in the last video, where we ranked all the worst dads in anime. I'll chuck it up on the screen. I'd heavily suggest go give that one a watch. That was a lot of fun to make. Hopefully, we can kind of have as good of takes as we did there. But T. Haribo, a, a villain that had a lot of potential, quite possibly, excuse me, quite possibly the best looking character designed Espada out of the bunch of them. Her design with the tan skin, the green eyes, the blonde hair, her hollow mask being on her face, covering her mouth and everything below her eyes. She looked the shark finned blade that she had that she used to pull out of her back. She looked fantastic, and as soon as I saw her on screen, she immediately grabbed my attention. And we noticed, if you noticed, she got a bit of a spotlight in Waco Mundo when Ichigo and the gang invaded. She had a few moments looking on Ichigo and Grimmjow in their fight. So to me, she was kind of, or not Oda, Kubo had he had some plans for her that he wanted to do. He gave her more spotlight than he did with, say, Baragon or Stark in the beginning of the series, well, not the beginning of the series, the beginning of the arc where Ichigo invaded. So I was expecting a lot, and it didn't live up to it. Aizen killing her, well, not killing her, but cutting her down at the end when he got sick of just his Espada failing, wasn't so much a downside on her, because that I don't mind. Him killing her made sense in the story and for Aizen's character. Once again, Jack didn't kill her, but him cutting her down, to me, wasn't too much of a transgression against her. It was more with how she fought Hitsugaya. She kind of completely had the control of the fight, and then Hitsugaya kind of just turned things around and then just completely demolished her. If it wasn't for Wonderwise coming out and screaming the ice prison that she was in, screaming and breaking it, she just would have lost to Toshiro Hitsugaya quite easily at that. And at this stage in the story, he wasn't, a super imposing threat. We had Stark going up against Shunsui. We had Baragon going up against Hachi, who is this master Keto specialist that was able to kind of outmaneuver him and, get around him and use Baragon's own power against him. We had with Haribel, even after Hitsugaya, she had probably the two weakest members of the Vizards, the most can't even speak, Jack Jesus, the least impressive members of the Vizards, and her fight scenes just got really kind of turned against her in a very unfortunate way. She had an awesome power to go along with the character design. Everything to do with the water in a world like One Piece. That was just so unique and One Piece. I've been making too many One Piece videos, Jack. In the world of Bleach, it was just such a sick design to go with the character. And her personality, her whole gimmick around sacrifice and what that meant to her. She had some potential to be truly, truly great. But where do we put her? It's more than just drop the ball. She's definitely teetering around that compromised villain area. Her, her in the next arc as well with the Quincy, and she's the ruler of Waco Mundo. And she even in the anime where I thought they might have changed it from the manga, she still just gets her ass kicked and imprisoned. There's nothing more to her character there. Look, I'm going to have to be, I will admit this, I'm going to have to be brutal on this tier list. Otherwise, a lot of these are just going to end up in like compromised. I'm going to say that she's a bad villain. She didn't take down any of the main cast or any of the people she was fighting at all. She didn't win a single fight. She got cut down by her own leader, and then she got one-shotted by the leader of the next arc. Not the best, but she definitely was salvageable. You could have done something with her. And I'm disappointed that Kubo didn't want to touch on her more. Maybe time restraints and stuff like that, which is completely understandable. But for right now, I'm going to put her as a bad villain objectively. That's something else to say. A lot of these characters on this list I actually still quite like. But when we're judging them for what a villain needs to do, be threatening, be imposing, be impactful to the story, be charismatic, be powerful, these things go, they're not just my personal opinion of, oh, no, she was really cool. I liked seeing her on screen. There's certain criteria that a villain needs to meet, and people like Haribel, I think, just weren't there. I'm curious to know where you guys would put someone like Tia Haribel, though. Oh, next up, maybe I should have placed these a little bit different. Next up, we have Sasori of the Red Sand. Another character like Haribel. I would say not as egregious as Haribel. For right now, I'm going to stick him in compromised villain. I might change that once we talk about it a little bit. I love doing videos like this because I can really get my thoughts out. None of this is scripted, as you can probably tell. So I can kind of make up my mind as we're going through it. Now, Sasori of the Red Sand, not my least favorite Akatsuki member by far. Had a cool backstory, everything involving his parents and in the Hidden Sand Village. Him being a puppeteer expert, we learnt a lot there. I would say why I think he might be in the fumbled category of villains is how he kind of went out. Now, he went out against Granny Chio, his grandmother, and Sakura, of all people, which I know a lot of people were not a fan of. It immediately kind of, even though it kind of makes sense plot-wise, which we'll get into, the fact that Sakura took him down right after the time skip as a Chunin kind of really impacts his, it's a more new age kid term, but impacted his aura. And it's something that his character, I think, really struggles with in terms of looking at it retrospectively when you're kind of ranking the Akatsuki members. Oh, because he got beaten by Sakura. He can't be that strong. But I reckon that's incorrect. I reckon he was quite a powerful and deadly enemy. Them having an antidote to his poison thanks to Konkoro is a big, played a big part in them beating him. But Granny Chio in that fight I thought was quite great because it made sense why she could get the better hand of him because she's his grandmother and she taught him everything that he knows about being a puppeteer. So her kind of having his number in a lot of ways makes sense to me. It's Sakura's involvement that kind of dilutes it a little bit. And I think that's warranted. I think fans' disappointment with that is quite It's not out of touch. It's very well. It's something I can definitely see and see the credit in it. With Sasori and his fight, it went very long, and I mean very long in the anime. It was broken up with everything going on with the trap from revealing the seals that Might Guy and his team had to deal with. It kept going back to Deidara, who wasn't doing much with Kakashi and Naruto. It was a very drawn out fight that got tedious in certain sections, dare I say, with some really cool moments like the third Kazekage puppet and finding out Sasori himself was a puppet. But there was so much more potential, and that's the word here that's really prevalent. So much more potential for this character. His partner Deidara, I reckon, was one of the better members of the Akatsuki, and I reckon Sasori had the potential to be just as good, if not better, with everything that he was set up to have. But the potential was ruined in the very long, drawn out fight and how the fight concluded. Even him, letting himself die at the end of it does make sense. I'm not saying that Kishimoto kind of went against his character writing for Sasori, but I reckon it could have just been handled a little bit more elegantly and he could have been a much greater threat than was initially presented. But next up, we have Kaguya Otsutsuki from Naruto. Now, we've got three main big bad final boss tiers in Naruto. We've got Kaguya, we've got Obito, and we have Madara. Now, Madara and Obito, they're special exceptions, and we're going to touch on what they mean when we get to them. But Kaguya, is she a bad villain? Is she almost unsalvageable? Or is she completely ruined? I'm not going to say she was completely ruined. I'm going to put her in almost unsalvageable, though. The presence of Kaguya herself isn't so much the issue. It's more how she came about, how Black Zetsu did everything and ruined kind of Madara's character to an extent to allow Kaguya to come into the story. And then once Kaguya was in the story, she didn't show much personality on screen, and her backstory was very meh. It wasn't super bad, but it wasn't super good. And when this has come at the expense of such a fabulous and generational villain like Madara, I reckon that it really, really hinders and affects her character as a whole. It affects her being a villain. She's not completely ruined because I think if we rewrote it a little bit, if we rewrote it a little bit, that she could have been written decently well if you just touched up a few minor things with Madara and how she came to be and just flared up her personality just a little bit. And she could have been an enjoyable enough villain. So I'm going to say that she's almost unsalvageable, but if you guys were going to put her in just completely ruined, I would completely understand that as well. But for right now, we'll leave her down here, with the asterisk next to it of potentially changing it depending on where this list takes us. So we have a One Piece character next, a bit of my bread and butter here. We have, I like to say the all big three are my bread and butter, but we have Basil Hawkins. Maybe a more of an interesting one, someone maybe not expected to be on this list. Drop the ball, compromised villain, or bad villain. They certainly dropped the ball with him. He was certainly compromised with everything that went on in Wano, which we'll kind of touch on briefly. But whether or not he was a bad villain, we'll leave him here for now. We'll go over why he was, why he was not a good villain, and then we'll decide if he should be bad villain or compromised villain. Basil Hawkins came into the story in Subodi Archipelago as one of the supernovas and one of the more impressive members of the supernovas. He had the best showing against Kizaru out of any of the supernovas, and he seemed to have a little bit more spotlight on him than the others did. It really seemed to be Luffy, Law, Kid, Hawkins, and Drake. And, Drake would probably be on this list as well, but he's not technically a villain, so we're not going to include him. But with Hawkins, he came in with this esoteric ability of turning into a straw man and being able to transfer his damage to other people. It was such a cool and unique ability, not just for One Piece, but just in anime and fiction. With his magician design as well, and how he would do everything on his tarot cards. He had a really, really sick design about him. Very, very similar to Haribel, actually. He had the character design and the power to go with it. It's what ended up happening with him. We know that he ends up getting drafted, essentially, to join Kaido after Kaido comes down and beats his ass. And he then ends up being one of Kaido's, let's say, servants, but he ends up becoming one of their headliners. Abandons his own pirate crew, abandons his own jeans. Does he wear jeans? I don't think so. Abandons his own dreams, at least temporarily, to join Kaido. And it doesn't go well for him. He has a cool moment in the beginning of the Wano arc where he fights Luffy and Zoro. But other than Kizaru, that's really his main claim to fame. He has a fight with Killer that's the story behind it is kind of interesting how he's made Eustace Kid one of his puppets, which makes it hard for Killer to be able to fight him because every injury he's doing to stuttered there. But every injury he's giving to Hawkins, he's also giving to his own captain, Eustace Captain Kidd. So that little touch of it was a little bit of extra spice that made the fight a little bit more enjoyable. But he just gets cut down by Killer in a very predictable way with how Kid had already lost his arm. So Killer targeted Basil Hawkins' arm and then just cut him down. And surprisingly enough, for what we know, he seemed to have just died. It was kind of interesting how he predicted his own demise with his tarot cards in the beginning of the arc. But yeah, very much disappointing. I'm definitely going to put him in as a bad villain. He's more in the same tier as Haribel than he is with Sasori. And honestly, I reckon Haribel was probably even more enjoyable. So I'm going to put him as a worse villain than Haribel. Let me know what you guys think of that one. Oh, the next one is a really, really big one. And one of these ones with an asterisk next to it as well. We have Orochimaru. Now, you might be thinking, Jack, why is Orochimaru on this list? He's very much a... When Orochimaru first appeared in Naruto, there was no one like him, and I mean that so impactfully because he came in and he had everything that a villain needed to be. He had the lore, he had the look, he had the charisma, he had the power, he had the personality, he had the intimidation. There weren't many villains like him in the beginning. Him lording over the Chunin exams and his threat of Sasuke abandoning the Leaf Village to go to Orochimaru was so prevalent. He had such a chokehold over the first half of the story and was truly one of the best villains in all of Naruto and all of anime for a period of time. But after part one of Naruto, in Naruto Shippuden, he really, really goes downhill. Him being sick and then being killed by Sasuke and then coming back out of Sasuke and getting sealed by Itachi and then coming back and reviving the Hokage, and then at this stage he was a bit more of a comic relief character and a bit more of a nicer guy, which ruined all the appeal that he had for him in the beginning of the series. You could definitely put him in Drop the Ball because it's 100% that, and Drop the Ball is kind of, like I said, a bit of an ambiguous category where big characters like this you might start seeing a lot of. But with he's a shade, he's two sides of a coin here. There's one side of him that would be up here in terms of great villains. But then the part two version of Orochimaru, I reckon, in some ways you even question him being a villain, even though everything he's totally irredeemable. He has to be a villain. That just makes it really, really disappointing seeing where he went up. So I'm actually going to put him as a compromised villain, surprisingly. And I'm actually going to put him as more of a compromised villain than Sasori. Because Sasori's reason for being here is wasted potential. Orochimaru's reason for being here is losing touch of his character and the threat that he presented to the story. So I'm going to have him as a compromised villain. I'm very curious to see if people even reckon he should be on the list. But we have Smoothie from One Piece. Now, this is another one that you guys might be very interested in even being on this list as well. I'm going to immediately just put her in Drop the Ball. She was one of Big Mom's Sweet Commanders, and she really, really dropped the ball. No, it wasn't her fault, but it was more Oda's fault. She just didn't do anything at all. And it's very disappointing to see from one of the Sweet Commanders. Because if we look at the commanders of Yonko, most of them do quite a bit. You know, we see what Marco can do, we see what Ace can do, we see what Jozu can do, we see what King, Queen, and Jack can do. We'll get back onto Jack, don't worry. But we see what Katakuri can do. We can even see what's his name? What Cracker can do. Like Cracker had a great showing in the Whole Cake Island arc, and the character that's stronger than him, Smoothie, just didn't get that herself, which was disappointing. Especially because female characters in One Piece don't usually get too much of a spotlight. You know, we have the female members of the Straw Hats, we have Big Mom, and we have Boa Hancock. But other than that, they don't really get a good shining. So seeing someone as powerful as a Yonko commander being wasted, I reckon is, reason enough to be on biggest villain flops in anime. It's just that most people don't even really remember her, which is telling enough that people might be surprised that she's here. We're going to cheat and we're going to skip a little bit here. And we're going to go to her other, cousin Yonko commander, Jack the Drought from Kaido's crew. They dropped the ball on him significantly as well. I'm not going to say, with his personality, people might say he's a compromised villain. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say they dropped the ball on him. They didn't drop the ball as much as Smoothie because he got more of a shining than Smoothie did. He has a very one-tone, bland personality. I don't necessarily think that's his fault. I think Oda has specifically written him to be quite a simple character. He doesn't need all the complexity to his character that others might. But he came in as the first character in One Piece with a billion berry bounty that we had known of. So he came in with a lot of hype behind him, and he transforms into a giant mammoth, which is so, so cool. It is one of the coolest Zoans in all of One Piece. But then his hybrid form is like a mammoth centaur, which just doesn't look very good, and it's not very practical for fighting. He gets taken out by Nekomamushi. He gets cut up by Ashura from the Scabbards, and he's getting beaten up by much more weaker characters that Jack seems to he seems to give Jack to these weaker characters to show that these characters that we thought might have been weak are actually quite strong. So he kind of strengthens the Scabbards at the expense of Jack, which, it's my namesake. It's tough. He has the mammoth fruit. He looks so cool. I think he's the only member on this that I've actually deliberately chosen him with his power, because he just looks cooler in his Zoan form than he does in his human form or his fishman form. So I'm going to have to put him as drop the ball. It was disappointing. I think he could have, if he had as much screen time as Queen and King, I reckon he could have been really, really cool. And I'm disappointed that we weren't able to see more. Next we have Yami, a Sparta number 0. Oh, where to put him? I'm honestly going to say probably completely ruined, honestly. I feel bad picking on Yami here, but his whole character was just nothing but a disappointment from day one. He gets introduced as a Sparta number 10. He is the hot-headed meathead of the group that we often see in shonen anime. He's partnered with the much smaller, much more composed, much more powerful and cool character in Ulquiorra. We knew where this was kind of going as soon as we saw the dynamics between them. And he gets, wrecked. He gets wrecked and belittled and embarrassed by Kisuke Urahara, not once, but twice. He then, in Wako Mundo, when the gang invade, he fights Rukia and Renji and Ichigo a little bit. Doesn't do anything of note. He fights Uryu before this, doesn't do anything of note. We see that he kills a few of his own men. He has a pet dog, which is cute, probably his only redeeming quality. And then we find out in this like cool fashion, it's like, no, I'm not a Sparta number 10. I'm a Sparta number 0. And it's like, oh, it's that meme from the UFC. Like everyone's screaming back, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. A Sparta number 0. I didn't think they existed. It's not a Sparta 1 to 10. It's a Sparta 0 to 9. This is crazy. And it was just Yami, but bigger and even probably less imposing. Byakuya and Kenpachi Byakuya doesn't even really do anything. Kenpachi just goes in and just defeats him off screen. Yeah, completely terrible. A completely ruined character. I can't even say he had that much potential. Making him the Zero of Sparta, I think, was just plain silly on Kubo's part. I would have kept him as just a Sparta number 10, had the weaker members of the Ichigo friend party that invaded take him down, and then just leave Stark as number 1, or Ukiura in his Segunda Epata form, Etapa form, to be potentially the strongest. A lot of people reckon Baragun's also the strongest, and Aizen just made him number 2. So there's lots of different contenders for number 1, but it shouldn't be Yami. He shouldn't be when I shouldn't have to bring him up when I bring up debates with the Espada. If it wasn't obvious already, I make no secret that I'm a shonen boy. I love all the shonen, especially like the big ones of my childhood. Big Three, they're my favorite series of all time. I know I'm completely basic bitch in that ways, but I'm just bringing it up to show that like the Espada and the Akatsuki, they're groups of characters that mean like it's a bit mushy to say, but mean a lot to me. So to see someone really wasted like that, I can't help but put him in completely ruined. We've got 2 more Bleach characters actually following up the line. Just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm just going to chuck Gerard over here. We'll get into him a little bit later. Let's go into Yuha. Oh, Yuha Buck or Yuha Baba. We're just going to call him Yuha from now. He's another one like Orochimaru that is a character of 2 halves. In some ways, he's actually a character of 3 halves because we've got the manga version and we've got the anime version. Because the anime expands on it a little bit more and makes him a little bit more interesting than the manga does. For the basis of this video, the continuity I'm going to go off is the manga mixed with the anime. However, the anime hasn't finished, so we have to go off kind of what happens in the manga at the end of his character arc, which is dreadful. Because he absorbs the Soul King, and he goes from this ruthless tyrant leader of a nation trying to, bring a better world to the races, kind of trying to being a little bit like Madara in terms of trying to do things as if he was like a humanitarian type of thing. But a ruthless militaristic tyrant who was structured and principled in a way that Aizen wasn't. Don't worry, we'll get into Aizen. He is on this list. I put reluctantly. We'll get onto him. But Yuha had a lot going from him, especially after 360 episodes of Aizen or whatever it was. And he had a lot of freshness, and that freshness really shone through in the first couple invasions of the Soul Society. But once he absorbed the Soul King, he became a totally different character. One that was really not enjoyable to watch. And then we have what happens with the Silver Arrow of the Quincy, where it's a Deus Ex Machina kind of ability that just goes in and robs him of his powers out of nowhere. Really not handled well. The epitome of drop the ball. But where do I put him? If we're just going off the anime 1 version of what we've seen from him so far, he wouldn't even be on the list. I'm gonna put him... I have to put him as a compromised villain. And it's going to be even worse than Orochimaru, I think. He can't be a bad villain because his first half of his story was just too good, too spectacular. But the second half was outright horrible to watch. And I found him more unpleasant to watch on my screen than I did Orochimaru. Hence, I'm going to say that he's a worse villain than Orochimaru, but still had more redeeming qualities than the two above him. And that's the thing with this list. Yuha's faults are kind of worse than Hawkins and Haribel's, but he has more positives about him than they do, so he's coming in as a better villain. So I'm going to stick him in C in compromised villain. I hate as well, guys, that these are being like cut off down here. I can't just like extend these boxes over a little bit more so it looks a little bit more nice and presentable. But hey, it is what it is. We have Apu from the Supernovas now, another One Piece character. Um, Oda more than dropped the ball on him. I'm going to say that he's a compromised villain, and I'll probably say he's more compromised than Sasori. No. You know what? I'm going to say he's a bad villain. Um, is he worse than Haribel and Hawkins? Yeah, I'm actually going to say he's worse than these two as well. I don't know what I was thinking in the beginning there, where I was like below Orochimaru. No. Bad villain Apu. Worst of the Supernova, not including Aruj, just because we haven't seen anything on him really. But Apu, I think Apu had more potential than other people might have given him credit for, and probably more potential than Oda might have considered him for. Because in the battle with Kizaru, he has a really cool scene where, Apu's sitting back and watching. He's seeing what all the other supernovas can do. He's having a good time. He's partying. And then he doesn't just leave. Like in Wano, he's quite a cowardly character. But in this, he wants to cause some chaos. So he goes and he uses his sound. Is it the sound fruit or like the instrument fruit? I can't remember. He's sound based devil fruit to blow up Kizaru. Now it's Kizaru. He's a low gear type. Apu at this time doesn't know Haki. It doesn't do anything to Kizaru. But the fact that he willingly put himself in danger, I thought was quite remarkable and quite good for a bad guy. But then Wano comes along. Like Hawkins, he submits himself to Kaido, which is kind of, whatever. It's not such a red flag on your character. You can kind of play it out as he was, playing the long game, waiting for his chance to betray Kaido. But the reason why he's in this category, wasted potential like Hawkins, and like I said, he did really, really good against Kizaru, and I thought that he had a lot of potential, like as did Hawkins. I was more interested in Apu than I was Drake, for instance. But not only was his potential wasted, Hawkins didn't do much in Wano, but Apu, the stuff he did do were actively bad. All the cowardly hit and run tactics, trying to manipulate everyone he came onto to join his side. I get that he's a coward, that's his gimmick, but it was just very, very unappealing to watch. I got very, very sick of it very quickly, and I just wanted someone to cut him down ASAP. So definitely a bad villain. I'm not going to put him out in almost unsalvageable because just his tier of villain isn't worthy of a category like that. But with what Oda did do to his character in Wano, he is pretty much almost unsalvageable. Really, really terrible villain. Don't care at all if we ever see him again. The next character, or should I say plural characters, is the only group of characters on this list. And it is the Spriggan 12 from Fairy Tail. Now, I'm going to leave them behind Kaguya at this instance because there's a lot of ambiguity between this ranking and a lot of asterisks next to it. Because it's a group of characters, not just one. The Spriggan 12 were a group of 12 super, super powerful wizards. 12 wizards which were said to be on the same level as like the first ranked wizard saint from the continent that the Fairy Tail Guild is on, from Ishgar. And, they're played up to be like these continent level threats, these super, super bad guys. Like, how on earth is anyone supposed to defeat them? Brandish, she's like the first Spriggan kind of introduced, destroys an entire island, which is a crazy feat that we see in Fairy Tail. So like there's 12 of them. They have so much potential. I can't tell. Like I'm a huge Fairy Tail fan. I used to consider it like the big four in quotation marks. And these Spriggan 12, I can't tell you how cool and how hyped I were for them. Like a lot of characters in Fairy Tale. And just now that I think of that, I'll just kind of mix these ones up a little bit. Um, but they just did nothing. Their personalities were really cool as well. They didn't, they didn't scam them in terms of personalities or character designs or power. Their power was fabulous. But in terms of where they went as villains, they all kind of just got beaten immediately, unceremoniously, and anticlimactically. Say those 5 times really quick. And it was super, super disappointing. Like, Inval was so good. Irene was so good. August was so good. The Wizard King, who could use copy magic and copy all these things, just got beaten by Gildarts in a fight that just, like, they didn't care about the animation quality. And that's another thing. And not just the fights themselves, but the animation qualities were really lacking on them. It needed so much more. It needed a high tier budget, and they could have been like I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't reckon it's outrageous to say they could be the best villain group in all of anime if they were actually handled with care and with some love. They were that good. They nailed each individual member in terms of looks, personality, and what power they had. They just couldn't follow through on the powers, and through it all, they're pretty much almost unsalvageable. It's really, really a disappointment. Demiria, the blonde-haired wizard that could stop time, who had the takeover god soul Kronos. She was so cool. Agia with the sand power that we see. Nineheart was really cool. Lacada Dragneel, he had so much potential and it just went nowhere. God Serena, the former strongest member of the Wizard Saints from Ishkar, who had betrayed them and gone to the opposition. We didn't even see his full 8 Dragon Slayer magics. I'm going to get mad. That is a whole video in of itself that I'm going to make. I'm going to put it on my list of videos to do. The Spriggan 12 and their demise. Definitely. I'm going to have to do something on that. Let me know in the comments if there's any Fairy Tail fans and if you guys like the Spriggan 12. But we have Haughty Jones next. Another one from One Piece. I'm just going to say a completely ruined character. Really, really did not like him. Really something One Piece didn't need to do for the first villain after the time skip. One Piece is probably my favorite anime and favorite story of all time. It was a bit of a slog though post time skip. It didn't really pick up until we got into Punk Hazard. When they go back to Sabaody, it was a little bit tedious. Sailing to Fishman Island was a little bit tedious, and Fishman Island itself was a bit of a bore. Jinbei at the end sharing blood with Luffy was an all-time moment for One Piece, but it didn't do enough to redeem the arc as in a whole. So I reckon Haughty himself, he has a lot of that to bear because he was the main villain of the arc and he was the one that was driving the plot along. Before he started taking his superpowered drugs to make him stronger, he was tedious and boring. Then he just got to be a big brute like Yami that could fire off water sharks and had big muscles that fought against Luffy. He wanted to take over Fishman Island and get back at all the humans. Not even for a good reason like Arlong wanted to, but simply for the fact of he just hates humans. And yes, before there's any Haughty lovers, if there is, I get that, it's Oda's showing that, it's generational hate, it's generational racism going on there by Haughty. But as a villain, as the first main villain from the post-time skip, he was just incredibly boring and tedious. I would honestly I honestly probably liked Yami better, but simply for the fact that Yami also just had so much more potential and need riding on him to live up to the Zero Espada, and he failed on that. It was a bigger fumble than Haughty. But definitely an S-rank shitty villain, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think of that, if you would place him the same. Another one of my Fairy Tail boys next, we have Zeref Dragneel. Now, like Orochimaru and like Yuha, one of the better villains on this list. A villain I really, really enjoyed. I'm not going to go into it too much because I'll give him his whole own video, but the Curse of Unsulum, killing having that his power is like death manipulation, and having it that the more he loves or cares is when he can't control his power, but then when he gives up on caring on human life, that's when he has full control over his power. That is so, so cool. Seeing him create all these demons in the background, creating whole empires was amazing. His relationship with Natsu and everything there, I'll just avoid spoilers if you haven't seen it, it's not needed to go into. That was great seeing that relationship. But then when he acquires the fairy heart, it kind of just goes downhill. Once again, more on the animation standpoint, the final season of Fairy Tail needed more than 50 episodes. It needed to be given more love. His whole reason for being a villain, altering time and everything. I like it as a motivation. Wanting him to die, wanting him like himself to die, I thought was a really cool motivation and something very interesting compared to the other big shonen final boss MCs. But just the fumble there with the last battle is just really disappointing. I'm gonna put him in drop the ball. Um, I don't. I don't reckon he's as compromised as Orochimaru and Yuha simply for the fact of these two went like half their stories being bad, while Zareth, it was literally only the final battle that I really found him tedious. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to think of if he's the worst drop the ball or if he's at the end. He has to be the worst because he there was more riding on him than Smoothie and Jack. So he's the first final boss villain that is going to be just be on drop the ball. We have, well, oh, actually, I should also mention I didn't include Acnologia on this. You could probably include him for the same reasons as Zareth. Final battle with him, just not with the other Dragon Slayers, just not being very good. But he probably had more positives than Zareth did, so I chose to not include him on this list. Gerard Valkyrie. Now, this is another character that might be redeemed in the anime. We know there's changes happening. In the manga, though, he had this super broken shrift known as the Miracle. Well, it wasn't actually a shrift, it was just his own power. He had the heart of the Soul King, and it made him essentially be unkillable. Whenever he was killed, he would just come back stronger and essentially immune, and he had the tools to counter his weaknesses every time that he got killed, and he was just simply unkillable and unbeatable. And this whole time we were wondering, like, how are our heroes going to beat this guy? And the simple truth was, they couldn't. Kubo had to come up with a way to beat him. The way that he came up with was a Yuha using his Unshwalen, totally butchered the pronunciation there, to rob Gerard of his powers. Yuha didn't need those extra powers at that time. It was totally unnecessary. He didn't have too much of a personality either. Pretty cool design, great power, not much personality. The author literally just had to write him out, and they wrote him out in a way that really wasn't compactful or made sense to the story. He was definitely a bad villain. He wasn't unsalvageable because I reckon the anime definitely could salvage him. But I'm going to put him as the worst of the bad villains. Uh, Gukoku? I'm completely blanking on his name. Upper Moon 5 from Demon Slayer. Gukoku, I believe it is. Um, just some variety for this list, and he wanted to include a character from Demon Slayer. Easily the worst one of the Upper Moons. I would say, not Tanjiro, um, Zenichi's former rival, the other thunder-breathing disciple. I found him very tedious as well, and I didn't like him much. But he did some cool things in the most recent movie, so I didn't want to include him on this list and besmirch him. Uh, Gikoku just... There was nothing bad about him. His personality was just very meh. His power was great, and his abilities... Sorry, his abilities are the same as his powers. His powers were great, and his character design was great. Very similar to Haribel Hawkins and Gerard. No personality. His fight wasn't as bad as these ones here because it made sense and it got a definitive ending. Made Muchiro look really cool, the Mist Hashira. But he just got defeated really, really easy and was very lacking compared to his compatriots in the Upper Moons. So I'm going to put him as a compromised villain, and I'm honestly going to put him behind Sasori. He had more potential um, than what he showed, not so much as Sasori, so it wasn't as wasted as much as Sasori. Gyukoko's the Upper Moon Five's real main fault was just lack of living up to his brothers and sisters, I guess you could say, in the upper moons, the upper demons, and was just a little bit disappointing there. It's not a drop the ball because I think we needed to see everything that we did from him. Just a little bit disappointing compared to the other upper moons that just all had a great personality. I mean, Upper Moon 4 didn't have the best personality, but better than Gyukoku's. Great personalities all wrong. Great powers, great character design, great story arcs. And I think Gyoku was just the one falling behind the most. I really hope it is Gyoko. Otherwise, I've just said it about 12 times incorrectly. But yeah, I think he's a compromised villain and probably the best of the compromised villains in terms of not too not too offensive the way that like Orochimaru and Yuha might have been. Overhaul from My Hero Academia. Um, Drop the ball on this one, I reckon. Um, Once again, probably below Zeref here. Great, really, really great character in his arc. Really cool power, great personality, great character design. Like I said, a good plot development for him. He brought the story along that what was needed for his arc. The disappointing bit, though, for him is what happened post fight. He had a great fight with Midoriya, where Midoriya was able to beat him through the help of Eri, and I was expecting a lot for him. The cool overhaul ability through his hands to be able to alter matter was just sick. And then Shigaraki just came and took out his arms, literally decayed his arms off. Oh, sorry, I am so tired. It is very late here. We're going past 12 o'clock at the moment. Took his arms off, and it was just, and then he just went to prison. He escaped prison, didn't show any personality, which is fair enough. The poor guy was just mutilated, but he had so much potential to be something even better, to escape prison and have an impact on the final battle like Stain did. And it was disappointing that he wasn't. So, like Gikoku, actually, he lived up to his potential. He did have more potential he could have shown, but it was just the disappointment that came with his character that really, really let me down. And he could have shown so much more to his character, I think, than what was allowed. Even if it wasn't him specifically, even just like his powers living on in Shigaraki, if he had had All for One at that stage. I reckon he should have been left in prison. If you really needed to take his powers away because he was becoming like a plot hole with how powerful he is, you could have had one of Shigaraki or All for One just take his quirk and be able to use it themselves. But very, very cool villain and just a bit disappointing what happened to him. Next, we have Zero from Fairy Tail. Oh, now Zero is the alter ego of Brain. Yes, his name is Brain. From the Arashion Seis. Like Demon Slayer, actually, Arashion Seis means the six demons. So pretty, his other alter ego, well, not his alter ego, his main personality, Brain, had to seal away his alter ego through seals, which were the other Arashion Seis members. And once they were defeated, we ended up finding out the true barbaric personality of Zero, who just wanted to destroy the world. Very much just anticlimactic, and no personality whatsoever, no charisma to him. His power, he used darkness magic. Powers were very, very lame. He had a cool moment where he sent Natsu to the abyss, and Natsu had a little awakening with Ignil, his dad, and he was able to activate, his Dragon Force again, get out of the abyss, beat Zero. But once again, it was one of these villains, and we're going to get on that with the next picture here. One of those villains that was just dominating the fight that just got beaten at the very, very end out of nowhere. Very much a letdown. You could have done something with Brain, perhaps, but I reckon Zero was pretty much unsalvageable. I'll put him worse than the Spriggan because at least the Spriggan had the opportunity to be better. Um, and he's probably even had less potential than Kaguya to be salvaged in any way. Really, really bad villain. No, I'm actually even going to put him as completely ruined. His transformation here was just very much a letdown to an arc I was actually otherwise enjoying. Oh, sorry. Other than the guild master here, Brain slash Zero, I actually reckon the Arashi and Sace were quite interesting characters in all the categories that mattered. Personality, power, character development, everything. They had a lot of backstory behind them. But Zero and Brain were just completely nonsensical, a non-interesting character. He was even worse than Hordy now that I think about it. Hordy at least had the generational racism to go towards him, which is a wild statement I just made. But he had at least some more spice to his character. Still not as bad as Yami though, because of just the potential of what the Zero Espada meant. But yeah, completely ruined character. Luxus Dragneel. Jack, what the hell are you talking about? If you know Fairy Tail, you know this guy isn't even a villain. Why is he on this list? He's on this list because for the first quarter of the story, he was an antagonist, and by God, was he a fabulous antagonist that completely got ruined. They dropped the ball on him. I have to put him as the one they dropped the ball the least on because the whole, he got to where he needed to, which was becoming a good guy, becoming someone that was worthy to eventually lead the guild. But if you guys have watched Fairy Tail, Luxus in the Battle of Fairy Tail arc, where they're trapped in Magnolia and having to fight each other, in that arc and everything leading up to it, he was such a scumbag. He was so unlikable. He dripped with smugness, and in such a kind of non-suave way and stuff like that. He was just very, very not a likable character, and he was meant to not be likable. You were meant to be like nuts, so you go and punch that guy's teeth down his throat. And then we get to the final battle, and the art is really, really kicking off here. He's fighting Gajial and Natsu at the same time. They're going Dragon Slayer magic. We find out that Loxus is a Dragon Slayer himself. Him going Lightning Dragon was mad. Him using Fairy Lore was fantastic. And you might be thinking, oh, Jack, well, you're hyping him up so much. Why on earth is he even a bad antagonist? It's because they dropped the ball completely on him, and I forget the author of Fairy Tail at the moment. I'm blanking on it, but he's fighting Natsu on the roof, and Natsu isn't doing anything. He can't beat Luxus at all. And then at the flick of the fingers, in the final hour of the fight, Natsu just turns it around and beats him in one move with a fire dragon slayer secret art. It was just such a letdown. I was just watching it with my head in my hands, being like, what on earth just happened? You were doing so well. It is the biggest issue with Fairy Tail. The characters are written so well. They're hyped up so much. The art is so good. The fights are so good. And it just ends terribly. We're just going to go straight into Asuma. The exact same reason. He's a villain unlike Luxus, like a true bona fide villain. He's fighting Urza, and we're finally seeing Urza being just pushed to the limit. For me, he's the first villain that should have just beaten Urza. He strikes Urza with the whole power of Tenro Island, a magical island where Mavis Vermilion is buried. He blows her up not once but twice, but through the power of friendship so obnoxiously here, Urza just cuts him down in the final moments, the same with Luxus. He has to be worse than Luxus, just because Luxus is supposed to be a good guy. Um, he's wor- he's a better villain than Jack, but because he's a better villain than him, just with how disappointingly he was treated, he has to be in Drop the Ball. Um, yeah, it just really, really. I mean, if we're saying that, then yeah, it has to be worse than Jack, worse than Smoothie, worse than Overhaul. Um, Not worse than Zareth because Zareth was at least Overhaul completed his story. Zareth was, just as disappoint. Had the same principle of why he's on this list as Azuma, but he had a lot more potential, so he was more disappointing. Loxus is down here just because he got to where he needed to go, just terribly done. I can't tell you how much I love Fairy Tail, and if you just accept that it's a little bit silly, I reckon most people would have a lot of enjoyment watching it. The fan service can get a bit much, and if that's something that you guys don't like, I can see why you wouldn't want to watch it. But I reckon the story behind it, the art behind it, the characters, and the chemistry between everyone is just so wonderful. But now we've got one of the three big boys left. The three biggest characters in this list, I reckon, the ones that will have the most controversy, Madara, Aizen, and Obito, with Yuha and Orochimaru kind of just behind those three. We have Madara. Um, I'm gonna put Madara in Drop the Ball, and then I'm gonna put Obito as a compromised villain, but the best out of the compromised villains. Now, I've done them both at the same time because I'm going to kind of be going back and forth between them for why they are here. Madara is pretty self-explanatory. Madara came into this series as a reanimation ninja, probably had the best entrance of all time for a villain, other than maybe, like, I reckon it was the best. Fuhrer King Bradley from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, going into his palace. Yes, it wasn't his introduction because he'd already been introduced before, but a similar vibe and a similar great scene. But with Madara there, he comes in, he takes on a whole army one-on-one. He's kicking through there, he's using taijutsu and beating them all up. He's summoning 100 fireballs behind him. He's using wood style, he's absorbing jutsu through the Rinnegan. He's using the Susanoo. He's using his internal Mangekyo Sharingan. He's being a fantastic. He then goes and beats all 5 Kage at once. He has so much drip, so much aura. Can you dance with me? Is your step strong enough? He has all these dance motifs that he's using to just break down his opponents. He has his relationship with Hashirama. His backstory is amazing. His personality is amazing. His ideology for being a villain is amazing. He's so good of a villain that the author has to step in himself through the guise of Black Zetsu to beat him because he's just gonna win. The story is over with Madara, but Black Zetsu comes in out of complete nowhere, betrays Madara through complete nonsense, turns Madara into Kaguya, a much less enjoyable villain, significantly much less, literally 3 tiers between them. And she caps off the story as the final villain. Very, very much dropped the ball. In terms of if you were just taking them as S, A, B, C, and D, he'd be an S tier of just being completely flopped. But I wanted to make this a little bit more interesting because there's so many characters and they're so diverse. I wanted to have them in their own categories, with S kind of being the most notoriously bad. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. But yeah, he at the end completely dropped the ball. Had to be written out of the story. There is no character in all of fiction that has probably dropped the ball as big as Madara did. Obito, on the other hand, Obito is one of those villains that don't get speaked about enough. Madara gets spoken about a lot, and so does Pain. But Obito, I reckon, really needs his flowers. Please trust me, him being on this list isn't me throwing shade on him. I actually really, really love Obito's character. I love it as him being as a kid with Team Minato. I love it when he's wearing the orange mask. I love it when he's wearing the white mask. When the mask gets destroyed, I love his fight with Kakashi. But once he becomes the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, his character just goes completely downhill. He just loses any form of personality, which is what made him interesting and compelling. Even if you didn't like the personality stuff involving Rin, that he certainly was a talking point. But he became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, lost his most badass jutsu, one of the most badass jutsu in all of anime, the Kamui. Lost his sick character design. Obito in the white mask was one of the best character designs in Naruto. Fight me on it. He just lost everything. and he lost it in a way that we had to deal with it much longer than Madara. He didn't just get written out of the story, he just kind of got sapped for all his worth. He eventually ends up getting redeemed, which is a little bit, he just declared war on the entire world. Um, you know, he sacrificed himself, everything with Kakashi and the extra Mangaka Sharingan. Oh my god. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm gonna leave it in just to, keep the realism in this video. We're filming late tonight, but I really wanted to get this one out to you guys. It's been so much fun, despite my yawning, making this video and going over these villains. But yeah, Obito just a disappointment once he became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Hence why I brought him into this video's picture, like profile picture, as the Jinchuriki state rather than his like normal human state. Madara as well in his Jinchuriki form, because that's where everything goes downhill. Really did not like the Ten-Tail Jinchuriki aesthetic or power system or what it did to the characters in Naruto. They were so much cooler off when they were just an ordinary shinobi. Zomari from Bleach. Probably just a completely ruined villain. Um, Once again, even worse than Horty. Not worse than Zero, but worse than Horty. Horty Jones at least had what we're saying. He had some ideology behind his character. Zomari did in like his not ecstasy. It was intoxication, was it um that his sin was, his aspect of death was. Either way, he was like a cult type of figure that was into like mind control and that was into spirituality, and he was just very, very disappointed. He came in and saying he was the most fastest member of the Espada, which I call bullshit on. Yes, he could make Sonito clones, but I don't believe that he was faster than Ulquiorra or Stark. Um, he has a cool enough character design, a little bit more on the basic side. His power is very ugly, the way it can control people through his eyes. I forget what he actually calls the power. Um, that's going to annoy me that I can't remember. But it's not even like he can just mind control people like in Pokemon with a hypnosis beam. He literally fires off eyeballs and it controls just specific limbs. Very, very much anticlimactic power. He gets completely obliterated as a villain as he becomes a pumpkin. He just becomes, in his resurrection, he becomes a pumpkin that just sits there. He fires off his just attack that he was doing before in all directions. Byakuya just one-shots him with his Bunkai. He then comes up and he just starts whining like a little baby. Has easily the worst showing out of any of the Espada in their final moments. Just a really, really disappointing and bad character. Easily the worst member of the Espada. He's even worse than Yami. But Yami, once again, I'm a broken record here. He had more riding on him to be better. That's why he's placed worse than Zomari. But yeah, just a complete dog shit character. Aizen. We're going to get onto Aizen last. Yeah, we're gonna keep Aizen last. We might play, it's a hook to stay tuned. What am I gonna do with Aizen? Gecko Moria. I enjoy Moria much more than a lot of people do. I reckon he's quite interesting as a villain. His care for his comrades that we find after the war arc, I find very interesting. The care that he had for his comrades to begin with, before he got beaten by Kaido, I find very interesting. I don't even reckon he's a compromised villain. I've put him on this list because I know a lot of people hate him. I reckon he filled his purpose well. I reckon that made a lot of sense to why he was such a lethargic and lazy character. Given his devil fruit, I reckon his devil fruit was really cool. Bit of wasted potential there, but I just don't reckon he's a compromised villain. Oh, I mean, he does get one shot by Jinbei in Marineford, which is a little bit disappointing. So I suppose yeah, you know what? I'm going to correct myself there. I'm going to put him as a compromised villain. Probably he has to be higher up than Obito, just because I'm pain putting Obito on this list. A little bit disappointing in that way that he was like a warlord and he just got one-shotted by another warlord. So in terms of power, In terms of strength, a bit of a letdown, a bit of a compromised villain. In terms of his power, a bit compromised as well, just because the Shadow Fruit had so much more to give, I reckon, had so much more potential. The whole thing as well of like you take someone's shadow, they stay alive, but they can't be in the sun. But if they die, then the shadow then goes like leaves Morio's control. I find that aspect of his power quite messy, and I think I wish Oda had like changed it up a little bit. I will say though that I do enjoy Mario, just like with Haribel, quite a bit more than other people seem to. And I do think in some ways he is a good villain, but I do understand there are ways in that he's a bad villain and he is compromised. I just don't really reckon it has anything to do with his personality. I quite like who Gecko Moria is as a character, and I think that he should. If it was just for his personality, I don't think he should even be on this list. But with his strength and with his power, I definitely think that that he should be included, and it's a little bit worse than drop the ball. It is that as well, but he is compromising a little bit with just his credibility as a warlord. Who's who? Our last one before Eisen. Getting to the end stretch of the video here, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned for this long one. I can't tell exactly how long we've been going on for, but I know it's probably going to peak at over an hour. Who's who, though? The second coming of Rob Lucci, one of the more interesting villains in all of One Piece. Total letdown. Saber-toothed fruit was really, really cool in principle. I can't help but say, a bit of a hot take here, it was a little bit ugly what he looked like in his Zoan hybrid form. Um, his main look was, it was all right, nothing to write home about. His personality was just very boring and tedious. I thought there'd be a little bit more interesting side to him because he was like a rogue member of CP9. I thought that that would be like such a cool like twist of everything. Thought he could have had some moments with CP0 potentially. A better and long-lasting fight with Jinbei I think was needed. Jinbei ended up really just taking him down quite easily with no difficulty. A bit of a racist character in a way that didn't really do anything to further his character along. But he was racist by the way he like treated the fishmen and stuff, the way he was talking down to Jinbei. And yeah, he was like the main threat of the Toby Ropo as well, and just didn't really do much. I thought Black Maria probably had a bit more of a showing. Same with Altair, I thought had a bit more of a showing and a bit more memorable than Who's Who. Sasaki could probably be on this list as well, but I would just be regurgitating the same stuff as I did for Who's Who, so I just chose to not include him. And 25 is just such a nice wholer number than 26 or 27 characters. Where to put him though? I'm going to say he's a compromised villain. More compromised than these three. We'll probably include him there. Not as compromised as Orochimaru and Yuha, just because they had so much riding on them. But I think that's a pretty fair spot for Who's Who. He's not a bad villain, because nothing he did was inherently bad to being a villain. Just very lackluster and disappointing, I reckon. Where would you guys put Who's Who? That's another thing. You know what? I'm putting him up here, actually. Who's Who? That's a terrible name. I don't even care about the pun or the humor behind it. Who's Who just really, really takes away his credibility. Like, his character design, while cool in some ways, is ugly in others. His power character design as the Zoan hybrid is just ugly. His name is just ugly. We're putting him down as a bad villain. Not as bad as the other ones on this list, just because he was able to do a little bit more than they were. But yeah, I'm going to put him as a bad villain. I wonder if that's a bit of a hot take. Oh, Eisen. Where am I putting him? I know this would be one of the ones that if I just asked someone who are the biggest flops in anime that people would give me, probably him and Madara would be the first two people think of. And I'm going to shock ya. Am I going to put him in completely bad? Am I going to put him in drop the ball? Which one do you guys think? Pause the video, have a think, put a bet on. Ooh, completely ruined. Nah, we'll go drop the ball. Absolutely not, people. We are going. Don't do this to me. Why is he not being included? Can I delete him? He shouldn't. It just ruined my whole punchline. He shouldn't be on the list. Why can I not get him out of the tier list? This is only the second time I've used this before. Um, can I not even like delete him from the tier list? Uh, guys, help me. This is where this needs to be a stream, and someone can help me and tell me how I can get rid of him from the list. Shouldn't have put him down on it. I should have just kept holding his picture. Because this man should not be on this list, ladies and gentlemen. Sosuke Aizen is not a bad villain. Goddamn, fight me on it. I don't know why people keep saying this. Everyone looks at his transformations as being ugly. The butterfly form wasn't the best. This form that we have in the profile picture looks really, really cool. The cocoon form doesn't look the best, but the principle of it looks really cool as he's becoming a whole new being. Like when the mask gets cracked and you see nothing underneath was really cool. His final demon form was absolutely perfect. He looks so badass in it. His final fight with Ichigo was so cool, seeing him get totally overpowered. Aizen, this whole show, Aizen is the most condescending character in fiction, in my opinion, and I love him for it. I am such a simp for Aizen. He is probably my favorite villain of all time. And seeing him just get his comeuppance by Ichigo, where he just stops the blade like Aizen did to him in the Soul Society. How he just slaps through Kurohitsugi, Hado number 90. And after Aizen's full incantation of it, how he uses Mugetsu, how Aizen is a byproduct of Ichigo being able to even learn Mugetsu, one of the best transformations in anime. And even people look at his final rant where Kisuke seals him as like, Kubo making him drop the ball type of thing. I loved it, where he's ripping it all off him, where he talks about the Soul King. Why, with your amazing intelligence, would you submit yourself and subjugate yourself to that thing? As he's ripping it off, he's got veins pulsing in his neck. He's screaming, and Kisuke's like, "Oh, you saw it, did you?" And Aizen goes on this thing, I am a victor. I will decide on how the world is, what happens with the world. It is such a great little crazy monologue speech. I don't get how people don't love it more. Him getting beaten without seeing his backstory was perfect. Aizen's character wouldn't work if we had his backstory. He's just like the Joker from the Batman universe. His character works so much better with just the hint of Ichigo saying that he felt loneliness in his blade. Otherwise, his character is just perfect as it is. He's then, when he's in his chair summer in the Thousand Year Blood War, and he's firing off massive beams. He's helping Ichigo fight Yuha. This man is not a bad villain. The fact that the fucking tier maker will not let me take him out of this list. The tier maker should be on this list. Completely ruined villain, the tier maker. This is absolutely disgraceful. I feel blasphemous, sacrilegious that I was putting my favorite villain of all time on this list. I included him for you guys because I knew there'd be so much complaining and whining down in the comments about, oh, where's Aizen? Why isn't Aizen on this list? He dropped the ball just as much as Madara did. He didn't. Fight me on it in the comments. Quite possibly the best villain of all time. Certainly not a villain that should be on this list. But guys, it is such a late night. This video has gone so long. If you've taken your time to go out and watch the whole thing, please, thank you so much. Like and subscribe. I love doing this long form content, particularly when I'm not tired and fighting exhaustion. But guys, it has been such a treat and a pleasure making this video for you guys. If you've been able to watch the whole thing, thank you from the bottom of my heart being able to support this channel watching such a long video. But guys, have a lovely night. Peace out. See you on the next one.